Alright, draft physics science type video. Response to Day, which is probably a mistake, and maybe some comment just on this whole subject of credibility and making arguments and blah blah blah. Day's on the subject of special relativity again, so instead of being current, he's again dragging up the old stuff. And so he has a video called Explaining Paradoxes of Special Relativity. It's an imbecile video. I mean, it's just, he titles it as if he's got something, and he says nothing. He contributes zero to the conversation in terms of saying anything that hasn't already been said. So no insights provided. So the first half of the video was a complete waste of time. It's about the scenario of you're going half the speed of light, you shine a flashlight forward. Does the light leave at the speed of light? So that's the trick in the question, is just the way you say it. Because clearly, okay, everybody's going to say, yes, it leaves at the speed of light. But that doesn't mean anything. Do you see it as the speed of light if you're on the ship? And the argument is, no, you don't. I mean, you do, but you see it escape at the speed of light. So it still looks like it's moving the speed of light, but that's because you're not seeing half of reality. So if you're moving half the speed of light, half of your time existing doesn't exist. So you're missing half of what's happening to make it go that fast, to make it seem like it's going still the speed of light away from you, because it won't escape you at the speed of light, and that's the point. And the argument is that people say it does escape the spaceship at the speed of light, that actually happens. When no, it just happens that you're not seeing it because your frame rate is interrupted. So that argument was already stated. I said 4,000 times actually. The only way you can see it escape at the speed of light is you have to not see the frames. I said frame rate over and over again. So just no insight provided there at all. And that wasn't a paradox. Nobody was arguing that was a paradox. They were only arguing the paradox in the sense that some people were saying the light actually does escape the spaceship at the speed of light, like Piro. They're actually arguing that it does escape the spaceship at the speed of light, when Day is saying exactly the opposite. Certainly I'm saying the opposite. The light doesn't go faster. It does the same thing. It travels distance in a certain amount of time. And if you're traveling distance in a certain amount of time in exactly the same direction, the fact is the light can't escape you. It can't get ahead of you at the speed of light. It has to get ahead of you at some slower speed, depending on how fast you're going. Period. So there's no paradox there. There's just wordplay. So people playing games with words. Now understand, this whole relativity argument has to do with this presumption that the entire laws, all the laws of the universe, are the same in frames as they are in the universe. And that was a stupid thing to call a law. So the idea is that you could be in your frame, and there's no experiment you could do that would tell you how fast you're going. No experiment. Because the time your distorted perception would compensate for whatever effects were taking place. So you could never, it's like seeing the motion of the baseball when you're throwing it in the bus. You're in the bus going 50 miles an hour, you throw the baseball back and forth. You don't perceive the fact that the baseball's moving 50 miles an hour. You just perceive the baseball going back and forth. And so this assumption is that because that's the way it works with baseballs, that it works that way with all of physics. And it was a silly presumption. It's completely unnecessary. There's absolutely no reason to sit there and make this kind of silly law, that you can't devise an experiment that will demonstrate in your local frame that you have changed your physics, that you are in fact in a moving frame. So I point out that the light clock proves it. The light clock can't be built by their specifications. That is, I can build a light clock, and the light clock will never tell the wrong time. You can't defeat it with your frame. So it will always tell you an absolute time, and you can't break it. You can't break the light clock without noticing that you broke it. And that's the key to this thing. So my argument was that yes, photons exist in the absolute frame only. They care not about your relativity nonsense. They don't care about your perceptual bullshit. None of that crap has any meaning whatsoever to them. And if you build a clock based on them, you won't be able to break it without noticing you broke it. So, and the other point I raised was the whole timing argument. I mean, I don't want to necessarily go over that, but the fact is your photon can't get to the destination unless you sped it up. Just as the baseball can't get out the window of the bus. Okay, it's completely dependent on the fact that it has extra speed to get out that window. It has the speed you threw it at plus the 50 miles an hour. And it won't go out that window unless it's going faster than 50 miles an hour. And light can't change its speed, and so therefore this thing can never work because the light will never get where you think it will. Alright, so yeah, we're back to the argument. The argument was a simple argument that you can see it quite obviously in the sense that if the light travels across the ship to a hole when you're not moving, the distance is this distance. And if you are moving, the hole's going to be at a different distance. It's the distance that's going to be the problem. It can't travel that distance in the same amount of time and therefore can't be where the hole is in that right amount of time. So quite clearly you'd have to aim it much further ahead. And every time, so Holiday says that in this video. He concedes that point in the sense that he says, well, if Mendham's right, you just aim different. Well, as soon as you aim different, that's telling you you're breaking the light clock. Right there, that's telling you your speed. It's a freaking speedometer. It's turning just as the faster you go, the more you have to turn it. So that's telling you exactly how fast you're going. So if you have to break the pointing vector of the laser, then you've already told yourself exactly how fast you're going. And the only other choice is to change the reflector on the hole or something so it bounces, it does this forward bouncing thing. You either change where the laser's pointing or you change where the hole, but either way, you can't do it. And the bottom line is, my argument is it can't happen anyway, because the light won't keep up with you. It's not even going to try. It's going to do what light does. Well, of course it's going to try if you point the laser in the wrong direction. But if you point the laser correctly, there's only one choice. The photons are going to land behind the hole. They're not going to go perpendicular. They're going to go backwards relative to you because they don't carry two momentums. They don't have the extra velocity, and they also don't have the extra pointing vector, so to speak. They don't have, you can't change their momentum. You can only give them one momentum. And if you give them that momentum perpendicularly, the bus is going to move. They're not going to go moving with it, and they're going to fall behind. Photons aren't baseballs. Photons aren't baseballs. Photons are not baseballs. I'll have to put that in the title, I guess. Photons aren't baseballs. They can't do baseball. And you people keep making these relativity arguments as if a photon's a baseball. And it's not. So the simple truth is, if you build a light clock, the idea of a light clock, if you don't know, is this idea that you send a photon and you hit a mirror and you bounce the photon back and you bounce the photon back, and that's a light clock. And, you know, that'll tell you time. And the point is, if you have motion in this direction, if your mirror is moving, your photon isn't going to move. It's going to go straight. It's not going to care that this wall's moving. You can't send it off in this direction like the baseball. See, the baseball has 50 miles an hour in this direction, and it has 30 miles an hour, let's say, in the direction you throw it, and its real speed is going to be the combination of those two speeds in terms of a hypotenuse. That'll be a percentage larger than the maximum speed. So it'll be something like 60 miles an hour going this way. But a photon can't do any of that crap. It's not a baseball. It's not a material object. It exists in one dimension, it moves in one dimension, and it moves a very specific amount of distance in a very specific amount of time, and you can never break it. And so your relativity things is an overstatement. The claims are overstated, and for this whole kind of magical purpose, as if we can escape the absolute laws of the universe by creating individual frames inside of individual frames inside of frames, and pretend that you can escape the laws of physics, and you can't. The fact that our perception lags, the fact that we sit on the bus and throw the baseball back and forth and our perception is limited, in the sense that at the same time we're thinking about throwing and we're looking at the hot girl over there, we have to think, oh yeah, the bus is moving and the ball's going that way with the bus. Our brains can't do that many things at one time, and so it just doesn't see it. But not seeing it doesn't mean it's not a reality. And photons aren't baseballs. That's the paradox. You keep drawing, your math is dependent on you making a photon into a baseball. Well, explain the theory of how you made photons into baseballs. Explain to me where your theoretical physics can create a photon that has to go faster, because that's what a baseball does. Baseballs acquire extra momentum to hit the mirror, to go out the hole. A photon can't acquire the extra momentum. Alright, so I'll play just little clips of this, but obnoxious video in the sense that he's so pretentious. And and the whole first half of the video is a waste of time, because he claims like he's talking as if he's dealing with an argument I made, when he makes exactly the same argument I made. I mean, there wasn't one thing he challenged about what I actually said. So it was just such a piece of straw man crap, because nowhere did I say anything different than exactly what he says. Amazing. So we'll play a little of that just for fun and just zoom through this. But I mean, the arguments have already been made. We went through all this mush. We wrangled and wrangled and wrangled, and it came down to that simple argument that you're either going to have to screw with the mirror or you're going to have to screw with the pointer, the emitter. But either way, you're going to see how you change things. Perpendicular is going to be right in front of you. You're going to see your laser moved, or you're going to see a gimmick where you made the hole really big or something. I mean, there's no gimmick you can do for the hole. The whole idea limits your possibilities, and there's no way to get to it. The physics won't allow it. You're going to have to push that laser beyond the direction. You're going to have to change it. You're going to have to shoot those photons in the wrong place, because they're going to take too much time to get to the right place. Period. They ain't going through the hole unless you have them eccentrically pointed in the wrong direction. Okay.
Relativities, predictions, and assertions about frames.
Right, this isn't about predictions. Because it's silly anyway. I mean, okay, yes, I'll predict that the photon will not keep up with the spaceship. You emit a photon, it's a free agent, it doesn't care about what the emitter was doing, it's doing one thing, it's going in the direction you shot it at the speed of light. It's not doing anything else. It can only go the direction you shot it at. Period. 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 Yeah, and that would be noticeable. the direction you can't you know, some people play this game that the emitter would still look like it was pointed perpendicular, but the photon would come out crooked. And that is such a cheat, you know, of all the you know, just the basic idea that the photon was created inside the emitter, so it wouldn't get emitted at all if it was doing this fake direction thing. So you would never get out of the emitter as a photon. So that would tell you, the fact that your laser doesn't work would tell you that you're moving. You know, because there's no other logical way to do this. There's nothing magic about the end of the laser. You know, and all of a sudden, oh yeah, the laser is pointed the right way, but the light comes out crooked. Well, that just doesn't work. Because again, this photon was a free agent all the way in here. How come it all of a sudden here decides to go that way? No, it would decide to go that way all the way in here. So it would break your laser. If you're claiming, you know, the photons are cheating from the very beginning.
Reference. And it goes like this.
Yeah, whatever. It doesn't go like the way you describe it, and it's just such a, I mean, it's just such a thin. You didn't get to the real point of what relativity is attempting to declare as a rule, which is that the whole set of the laws of physics, that none of them are based on any absolute frame. And no, the truth is that photons are.
Quite simply. Normally,
I mean, I would argue all the forces are, but I mean, yes, photons are a demonstration of the fact that what you see with the big stuff doesn't have anything to do with what the little shit is doing. The little shit is playing in one universe, not a framed universe.
you talk about two observers, one going on a speed of light, you know, going half.
Most of this is just so inarticulate too, which just makes it that much more tedious. It took them, 5 minutes just to get to the part that yes, there's a spaceship going half the speed of light. You shine light ahead. It's not that complicated.
So, observer, spaceship. Spaceship travel.
And he plays all this little like he's talking to people in kindergarten or something. It's so patronizing.
Traveling at 90% the speed of light. Spaceship switches light on. Observer inside spaceship goes, oh my god, I thought we were doing 90% speed of light. But look, the light is leaving us still at the speed of light.
Mm-hmm. So he's changed it now, saying that they know how fast they're going, and now they're marveling at the fact that the light is leaving them so quickly. When if they know how fast they're going, then they should already be able to figure out my perception's broken, and I'm at 90% the speed of light. I'm only seeing 1 second out of every 10 seconds. The world's buzzing right by. Like I said, all you do is put a window in these spaceships, and you'll see, the truth. But again, from inside the ship, looking forward, yes, if we're going to argue that the human beings are time dilated, you won't be able to see the speed. But I'm saying if you have a light clock working, the light clock will tell you what time it is.
Measuring that line.
If you have a light clock in your spaceship while you're watching what's going on outside, the light clock from your perception will also look broken. It look like it's going way too fast.
Observer looks and says, ha 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 ha. The observer sees the light leave the spaceship. I mean, it's very practically hard to do, but you could imagine.
Yeah, it's good. Interrupts himself.
It fits from that logical sense. And that's what's forgotten to be described, that it all...
Yeah, see, you keep saying something's gotten forgotten, that I'm somehow not taking into account, and blah, 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 blah. Like I said, I didn't say there was any paradox there. The argument was, the paradox is people claiming light actually leaves at the speed of light. That's what they're actually stating, is that the actual fact is that the light leaves you at the speed of light, meaning it's going away from you at the speed of light. That can't happen. And there's people arguing that that can happen. So you haven't even gotten the argument correct, retard.
But there could be some agreed. They say, oh no, this is the clock which keeps, you know, time, Earth time, or look at, and it just so happens.
So again, my argument that I'm making is a light clock doesn't tell any time but absolute time all the time. It doesn't tell Earth time, it doesn't tell Martian time, it doesn't tell on a bullet time, it always tells time.
This animal has a life cycle, and look, there's all its generations. Selfie with first generation of this.
So again, I just turn this into a kid's fucking play, a pageant.
You get your laser. Let's just assume Mendham's right, and that they pointed at the hole, and it doesn't go through the hole. It falls behind the hole in the spaceship. So the light clock. You mark off.
Yeah. Yes. I don't know why. Yes. Let's assume I'm right. Well, that's what's going to happen. Okay. Period. We're done now.
Speckle around the light clock. What should be perpendicular, and it bounces off of its behind. But you could.
It doesn't really bounce off behind. Obviously, the side of the ship moved forward, and the light went perfectly straight. So the light doesn't go behind. The side of the ship moves, and the light, by the time it gets here, the hole has moved, and so it hits here, perfectly perpendicular. The light does what it does in its absolute frame. It doesn't care about your relativity bullshit.
Because it's only going a percentage the speed of light, say 90%, there would be an angle you could turn.
Yeah, 90% might get you into trouble, actually. Okay, 90% might be too much of an angle. You can't get there from here, so to speak. So don't make it too high a percentage, because then you're going to be out of luck. Because the fact is the distance. This distance is going to become so great that the photon has no chance. No matter where you turn this, the photon will stop. You know, in the amount of time it has. It will never get there in time. Ever. I mean, as you keep turning as you keep changing the angle, you're going to keep making the distance longer and longer. I mean, that's kind of obvious, right? I mean, this length is huge, and this length is short. So as you keep turning it, you keep making the distance longer, which means light can't get there. I mean, you know, it's 1, 2, 3 times as long distance. So it just can't possibly, this just keeps going further ahead because you give it more time. You give it 3 seconds to get away, and like, you know, I mean, it's at one place, it's like here in 1 second. You know, it's here at 2 seconds, 3 seconds. So the longer you give the hole to get away, the more impossible it's going to be to aim at it. So that doesn't even work. I mean, your aiming argument isn't going to work if with each turn you make the distance longer, because then the photon can't get there in the right amount of time. So it's defeated by the fact that every adjustment you make breaks the photons even more, makes them more and more incapable of getting to the target in the time they have to get there. You have to understand, the light has to get to this location in the same amount of time it takes light to get to this location. Just understand what that, I mean, this is the paradox, dopey. Okay, get it right. Light travels this far in this much time. It now has to travel this far in the same amount of time for the hole to be here. If you take longer, the hole's going to be here. And if so you're going to turn your laser to some other angle, that lengthens the amount of distance you have to travel, which means you're falling behind again. And now you have to hit. So by the time you aim here, well, no, the truth is it's going to take longer, so you have to aim here. You're never going to fix that. Light won't do that. Light's not going to do this distance in this time. Baseballs do this. Baseballs can do this extra distance because you gave them the extra speed. They have more speed. Light can't acquire more speed. It can go one speed in one direction, period.
Yeah, whirring.
So he's not only not getting that argument, the timing argument. He's not even getting the argument that this is about making doing an experiment that will tell you how fast you're going inside the frame. So from inside the frame, he's just doing it. Well, I'll just point my laser. That tells you how fast you're going. That's your speedometer then. So you now did an experiment that revealed your speed.
Because the light is capable of going faster than the spaceship. Yeah, the light goes light speed, right? And you're only going 90%. You could turn the laser to point forward, if you like, into the future. I don't like this vocabulary, but this is...
Well, that's what time is. So time all has to do with about the pre-existing condition and then the future condition. So it seems to me to make a lot of sense to point out that the future is not in the same place that the past was in. And so you can't play this game that I'm going to shoot at the past and somehow magically hit the future that's in a new location.
And the vocabulary Mendel uses. You could point a laser and get it to go through the hole.
There, well, again, as pointed out, no, you can't get it to go into the hole because every time you change that angle, you increase the amount of time it's going to take, which means you increase the amount of time the hole has to escape. So it won't work.
Outside the spaceship, see, doing a longer route.
Right, so now he's doing the idea of the mirror thing. And again, the mirror is moving. The photon isn't. So again, if you're going to shoot a photon perpendicularly, you're going to have a mirror that's much bigger than the middle of the mirror, so to speak. You're going to have any hope of reflecting the photon. Okay, you shoot the photon at the mirror. The mirror is moving this way. Well, the mirror is going to get away, so you have to make the mirror very long. And even if you make the mirror very long, then the mirror is going to reflect back to a location, and your other mirror is now way over here. Your mirror's gone way the hell out of no chance. So then you have to put some kind of reflector on your mirror, okay, where it reflected the light this way. But again, then you're back to the same problem because every time you move the mirror this way, this has more time to get away. Ain't gonna work. No chance. You can't get past the fundamental argument. The simplest way you can say it is this distance. Okay, you can't make the distance longer and get the photon to the hole. The only way you can get there is it has to go faster because it's always a longer distance. The future's further away because it's moving away. Can't defeat that. That's the paradox of your silly axioms, your silly, completely unnecessary axioms that, any frame of reference, all scientific experiments are the same, blah, blah, blah. No, they're not. And the fact that Galileo didn't understand that because, yes, he didn't even know what a photon was, and the fact that even people like Newton or somebody else could not understand that is perfectly reasonable because every experiment they could do, yes, it was true. Drinking tea, yes, that experiment works. No matter how fast I go, the drinking tea experiment works. But we're talking about a much more advanced physics than that small physics, and it's just a silly conclusion to draw. And as pointed out, it's an unnecessary conclusion. There's absolutely no reason to reach for this idea that there's no absolute universe that has any absolute speeds in it. There's no reason to even reach for that.
Was going slower. Yeah? And if only they knew that the length was contracted and that the two effects.
So he's still saying how, well, the person in the ship sees everything just this, as he just pointed out that they pointed the laser the wrong way. So there's no indication that we're moving, well, except that we just pointed the laser in the wrong direction. So he's already violated the rules, which is he had to break the light clock to make it work, quote unquote. And again, as I'm pointing out, there is no break that'll make it work. You can't break it and it still works. It's not a light clock, and it won't work if you break it. And you can't make it tell the time you want to tell. It's going to tell universal time all the time, every time.
Light speed. The people inside just measure it as doing so. And the reason they measure it as doing so is because their clock's broken. We on the outside.
So he's conceding they're measuring because their clock's broke. Their clock. Their internal clock. But that's not what these people are arguing. They're arguing that these changes happen to the physical universe. The physical elements change. They do these magical things. Okay, it's not just perception. It's somehow physical reality, as you said, contracts or stretches or does some other thing. I'm arguing that none of that actually happens, and if it does happen, both observers will see it happen. But you can't break the light clock.
You can laugh that they're fooled into thinking that.
Now again, they were laughing and pretending they were fooled when they bent the laser the wrong direction. No. Okay. This is clearly we're going really fast because we have to change the direction of the laser. And it still won't work, which is the irony. Anyway. I don't want to go on this relativity subject. It's just, to me, this is where you just say, okay, it's a religion. These people are just, the dogma, it's, nothing can be changed. You can't edit the Bible. You can't edit this dogma. And, whatever's been an accepted axiom is accepted for a good reason. It wasn't ignorance or foolishness or bravado or hubris or some other kind of crap that got some axiom accepted as the truth. This is the way it works. I mean, they have completely modified the model of the atom, but they did it in this little tiny little incremental way, because they said, okay, it's wrong, we got to fix it. But it took them literally decades to do that. And their new model, in my opinion, is worse, but I'm just saying, they knew their model wasn't quite right. But this relativity thing, they just cling to this hard axiom that because of this relativity game, somehow this game lets them escape the laws of physics, in the sense that now they think there's some sort of hope that they're going to time travel or something. I don't know why this devotion to this silly premise that because you can fool stupid humans in a bus throwing a baseball back and forth, that somehow the laws of physics are completely breakable. They're only dependent on what you see in your personal little relative world. You don't have to take account for anything else. I guess it has to do with the whole philosophy of discounting other people's suffering, as this idiot does. The Chinese people don't really exist if I don't see them. Yeah. Reality doesn't happen as long as I don't see it. It didn't happen. Kind of bullshit. I guess that's what this is about. And if that's the truth, this planet is a lot scarier than even I think it is. Fuck.